In our mission to make this an interactive day, we invite entrepreneurs to attend a special fireside chat in the afternoon, conducted by globally acclaimed law firm Taylor Wessing. They will discuss different legal frameworks and aspects to take your business to the next level. So remember to stay here till the end, please. Now, we have something special. We are going to have an in-depth session with Asia's biggest aluminium cladding manufacturer. Yes, his brand is Alubond, is almost in every skyscraper in the UAE. He's the founder and the chairman of Mulk Holdings, a global business powerhouse. When it comes to influential leaders, then it is highly recommended to know about Nawab Shaji Mulk. And to interview him will be Aziz Merchant of Brands Management Consultancy. So if we could have them both over here, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your kind presence this morning. Welcome, Nawab Shaji Mulk. It's an honor for me to do this with you today. In fact, when I first read Shaji Mulk's profile, I had decided when I first meet him, I will ask him for an autograph. And I'll tell you the reason why. He is the chairman of Mulk Holdings, the most diversified multinational company with a presence in 90 countries. He's ranked number 9 in Forbes' top 100 Indian leaders in the Arab world, 2017. He has been the recipient of the MRM award winner for the largest manufacturer in the UAE. He's been the winner of Sharjah Excellence Award for largest manufacturer in large-scale industry, and he's ranked number 7 in Arabian Business Richest Indian in GCC. He is the brand owner of Alubond USA, which is the number 8 most admired company in GCC with manufacturing bases in 7 countries, and he is a board member of the Emirates Cricket Board. So that's the reason why I wanted an autograph from you.
Thank you, Aziz. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you're too kind in your words, and really is an honor to be here and addressing this August gathering of the SME leaders and the decision makers and all the strategists here. It's really my pleasure to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you. The idea is not to profile Shaji Mulk. He needs no profiling, no introduction, no positioning. The idea is to learn from his footprint of what he has, the path of success, of what he has achieved, and how he has managed growth. It's a very tricky function. It's not very easy. There are many aspects, very complex aspects to accelerating growth. And we hope that today with your experiences, your expertise that you will share with us today, we will leave this room with a lot of takeaways on how to manage growth. The first question that comes to mind is, what are the 3 most significant moments in your journey from the start till where you are today?
Oh, I think it's been a long journey. It's came to UAE in 1982 as a young aspiring student. The reason for my coming was I was a pretty good student back in India, coming first in the state, president scholar and all that. So the aspiration was to actually go and do a master's in the best university in the world. And for me in those days was Wharton's in Pennsylvania. So I came here and started doing my regular TOEFL, GMAT, and all that. And it took me about 9 months. In the meanwhile, I took a job at the same time in my sister's company and trying to see, what I can do. And started tasting that first success this wonderful country can give to any aspiring businessman. So I was making some small money. And then I got admission. I got into the Whartons, paid the fees, booked my ticket, and a week before my flight, I had this niggle in my mind. Am I doing the right thing? So there was a very close friend of mine who was an established businessman. And then I went and spoke to him. Look, I have this doubt, should I go or not? And he asked me one question, 5, 10 years from now, what do you aspire to be? Do you want to be a CEO of a large multinational company, or do you want to be a businessman? And that was clear. I was very, very clear at that age that I want to do business. I said, no, I want to be a businessman. And then the decision was taken. I didn't go, actually. So I never went, and that is one of the most significant decisions that I've taken in my life, that gave up my education and then got into it, into the business, and my journey started since then, yeah.
Fantastic. I think in every company's growth curve, there are always ups and downs. When did the first diversification happen and why? Has the growth graph always been vertical, or has it experienced ups and downs?
Yeah, I think it's logical to have, the curve and the ups and downs in business, for sure. But then, for me, the diversification has been more of a forward and a backward integration opportunity which the business itself forwarded. For example, as Alubond brand started growing,
Okay.
and normally a product is a combination of various raw materials, about 4 or 5. It's an aluminum there, there's a plastic there, then there are compounding codes there.
Right.
As our expansion started and we started getting bigger and bigger,
Right.
each of the raw material itself, manufacturing those materials became a source of diversification and an integration.
Correct. But this was still related diversification.
Absolutely. Then, but one diversification was totally related, but then out of the field,
Correct.
which is the solar power.
Okay.
Now, you'd be surprised what is an aluminum doing with the solar power.
Exactly.
Now, you see the mirror, if everybody knows mirror means glass, right?
Right.
You think glass is mirror. But then there was an American scientist who actually thought he could coat mercury on aluminum and make it a mirror. And he came to us to develop that product.
Wow.
So we successfully developed an aluminum mirror
Wow.
with our knowledge. And today, that aluminum mirror is used in a lot of solar plants. So that's another diversification that happened. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. When did the group experience the highest growth, and what was the reason for it?
I think the highest growth was between 2002 and 2010.
Okay.
Basically, because that's the time that we actually started the Alubond. We brought in, you could say, the focus was more on the emerging markets,
Okay.
like Africa, the Middle East, Asia, basically.
Right.
And so the cladding was new, and we took the opportunity of setting up various plants in different markets.
Okay.
And so we had an opportunity, and mostly, I think, taking advantage of the right thing at the right time, basically. Yeah.
So expansion was one of the biggest vector for growth.
Absolutely. Yes.
And diversification, as you said earlier, was related integration, backward integration.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What is the formula for growth? Is it instinct-based? Is it gut-based? Is it an appetite for risk-based? Or what drives a leader to accelerate growth versus, you have options of growth, consolidation, harvest. How do you decide that this is the route I have to take?
Well, I think it's always a combination of, when you talk about consolidation and acceleration go hand in hand, basically.
Okay.
Now, you need to make sure what you've created is solid and on a good path.
Okay.
And then the acceleration comes with that.
Okay.
Now, if you're doing the right things in the right market and making sure you have a proper market share and following the right policies, the growth would be more or less a natural process.
Okay.
But then consolidation becomes a very important part of the growth process.
Absolutely.
If you neglect that,
Right.
then you can fall.
Absolutely.
So you need to make sure that you have a proper balance between the consolidation and
growth.
acceleration, basically.
And growth, how has it been in your case? Is it quite based on instinct, or do you go into the process of feasibility, competitor mapping, looking at what the gaps are?
I think I'm known to be a big risk taker. My board normally tells me that I take more risks than I should be taking. But then I think it's very important to identify, and that's where your gut feeling comes, yes.
Okay.
But then if you believe in a certain product or a market,
Okay.
and in a way, you should be taking those risks.
So this is what you call calculated risk.
Well, you've calculated risks with and backing your own thoughts, basically.
Absolutely.
Back yourself, basically.
Absolutely. Nowadays, in the turbulent business environment globally, how important is the role of predictability? How important is it for business owners, SME owners, to start predicting and making a certain adapting to that change which comes out of predictability?
I think it's very important. I mean, that probably is one of the most important keys that you can actually deal with.
Okay.
You need to predict the market trends. You need to identify what's coming next within your organization and how the market forces. Because today we live in a very dynamic world.
Absolutely.
Now it could be political situations, policies which change the whole dynamics. It could be technology. So you are living in a very, very dynamic world. So if you're not able to predict, then you can be in trouble. So it's very
I think
important,
that's a very important attribute of business, is to be able to predict. But how does one predict when visibility is not very clear, when there is very minimal visibility? How does one manage growth in that?
No, I think if you look, it's very visible.
Okay.
It's a matter of looking, isn't it?
Okay.
I mean, if whatever kind of business you're in, and then you see the trends. It's all about understanding the trends.
Right.
And I'll give you one classic example within my business.
Sure.
I think it was about 3 years back, we had a big fire in our address hotel.
Right.
And that was caused by the cladding.
Right.
And huge challenge because in overnight, the perception of cladding changed. People thought this is a disaster.
Wow.
You should not be having cladding anymore, and let's ban the claddings.
Wow.
Right? Now, we as a company had seen it coming.
Really?
So we had already developed a fire-rated core. So when the problem came, we were ready with the solution.
Right.
It's not that we're not offering, but then sometimes the policies need to change.
Right.
And then, of course, the world is now changing for a non-fire-rated to fire-rated, where the cladding is all fire-rated now.
Right.
Now, even the UAE government has now passed regulations where you need fire-rated claddings.
Absolutely.
I'm just giving a small example of how you need to go with the trend and predict what could happen, basically.
In spurring growth, there are also phases of crisis. There are phases of downturn where you have to manage a lot of expectations. Have you had to do that a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just give you one example.
Correct.
I mean, we were faced with a situation where we probably thought we might have to shut down the company.
Wow.
Because the problem was huge.
Wow.
Now, one of the most significant milestones in the world, which is the Addis Hotel, actually had a fire. And obviously, I mean, the tendency was this is not the right product.
Right.
And then we are very proud of the fact that we not only were able to provide a solution, but then replace the Addis Hotel with the new technology of Alubond. So today the Addis Hotel stands with fire-rated Alubond.
Wow. This is thanks to you being able to have predicted and adapted to the change.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do you advise SME owners who need finance for growth or who need to convince the banks, who need to convince the lenders. Is there a formula to that process?
I think it's not about the formula, it's about doing your homework right.
Okay.
I believe a lot of SMEs do not get the desired result because they haven't done their survey properly, they haven't
Okay.
presented the facts properly.
Okay.
And, it's a matter of, I'm sure the banks, from my own experience of, my journey of a small business and growing further.
Right.
I have experienced, the banks are forthcoming as long as you make your case
Right.
in a proper way. So I think it's all about making sure you get your projections right, making sure you get your auditor right.
Good.
A lot of people make this mistake of going to a very small auditor,
Okay.
and then the banks will have, maybe the books are not right.
Correct.
So
So what you're saying is financial discipline is very important.
very important.
Okay.
Financial discipline, market survey, your market reports,
Got
your business plan,
Right.
all
in
that
the-
has to be solid, yeah.
And in the current times, also compliance is playing an important role.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So that is something that for SMEs, it's important to apply. How much is passion for a sector important versus the potential of the sector? In your case, especially cricket, you're a fan of cricket, but you have also ventured into cricket as a commercial venture with your T10 cricket team. Could you tell us a bit more about what led you to it?
Yeah, I think this particular project of T10 has been by far the most exciting and interesting project for me in my business career.
Okay.
So you would be surprised what is the sport
Yes.
passion doing in this? Because you see, again, looking at sport
Okay.
as a business, if you really look in the global scenario, football is by far the largest, number one.
Yes.
Over 3 billion, followers. Next comes cricket with almost 2.5 billion followers.
Surely. Wow.
Now, cricket has evolved over a period of time. There used to be the 5 days cricket where nobody followed. Then it evolved to 1 day.
Okay.
Still too long.
Okay.
And the latest format is about 4 hours,
Okay.
which became the global hit. Now, me and my team were kind of evolving to why is football the number one and why is cricket not the number one?
Okay.
So we came up with an analysis that, the spectators go to a sport to experience emotions.
Right.
Emotion of thrill, sadness, happiness,
Right.
and then you connect.
Right.
And there's a time span for that.
Right.
Now, football is a 90-minute sport.
Okay.
And then for anybody to sustain those emotions, let's say 4 or 5 hours,
Right.
it's not so. So what we did is, let's turn cricket into a 90-minute sport.
Interesting.
So that's where we launched the T10, and we did it at an international, global level. So 2017 was the first trial, 4-day event. We engaged about 60 top international cricketers in the world,
Really?
televised and all that. So the result was on a finals on a Friday. I remember it was raining, and we thought, okay, we're not going to have crowd today. Not only the stadium was packed, 10,000 people were outside the stadium.
Wow. Amazing.
And they couldn't get in, and of course we had a small issue of the paramilitary coming in, shutting down the stadium and all that.
Wow.
But it showed
Yes.
a shorter format can be very successful. Yes, today now I think we are in the 3rd year running. We are engaging at the moment with a few government supports, and we're very happy with the way it's progressed now. Yeah.
So I think it's a good lesson where passion can also fuel growth if planned well, and it can give you commercial dividends. Absolutely. How different is the Shaji ul Mulk at home versus the one in the office?
Well, I hope not to be too different, because for me, home is family and the company is also family.
Excellent.
Employees are not, the word employees is, in my book, is a wrong word. They should be partners and family members, basically, because without them, you're nothing.
Absolutely.
And we try to show the same, feeling in the company as well. And most of them, the senior management are with me for last 2 decades.
Wow.
So very much like family members.
Excellent. And
So-
you have 7,000. Over 7,000.
Globally,
Globally.
we're close to 7,000 around the world, yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Finally, before we open the floor to Q&A, I would like to request you to give the audience, the SME owners here, 3 golden tips to accelerate growth from your experience, your expertise.
Well, I thought it was normally 1 tip, but there's 3 tips now. Okay, I'll try. One of my favorite, of course, is what I have always believed in, is always deliver, over-deliver, and on time. I mean, you cannot go wrong when you do that.
Excellent.
You know, that's your credibility,
Yes.
basically.
Right.
Now, that has always been the mantra that I have worked for. And then I think the other tip is, so we talked about, you know, the balance between success and failure.
Correct.
I think it's extremely important for a person to balance your personal life with your work.
Excellent.
A lot of people sometimes do get too involved in the work and perhaps neglect a bit of your personal life, and you need to be a happy person.
Right.
You know, a happy person is what breeds success.
Right.
So that would be my second advice or suggestion or whatever you call it
Thank you.
in terms of work. And then, of course, the third and not the least important is absolutely back yourself. Because it's you. In the end, what you see, what you know you want to do,
Right.
is your confidence.
Right.
You know, if you back yourself, you'll see, the other people will see in you your confidence.
Right.
And so that's
Thank
my
you.
advice.
Thank
Yes.
you. And I must acknowledge that you're also giving back a lot to society. So thank you for that, Mr. Shaji.
I think it's our commitment and also responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for our guest here?
For your time and sharing your thoughts with us. It's really inspiring. It's a very generic question because there is a thin line between small business and a startup. And what would be your thoughts? How would you differentiate a startup and a small business?
I missed your last part. Can you repeat your question, please?
The difference between a startup and a small business. What is your thought?
Are you asking the difference between a startup and a small business?
Yes.
Well, I think startup to start off would be a small business to start off, right? But then perhaps the main difference is a small business is already an active business. Now, startup can be a concept, a product in trial, something that you're going to sell, and then a lot of startups do have various stages of business development. Now, I suppose a startup can turn into, you know, a mega idea, mega business, and the same thing, a small business, if done right, and you have the desire for expansion, can also turn. So there's not so much of difference, but then just the significance is how you deal with these two. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I have a question. So what was previously maybe known as a businessman can be called an entrepreneur. When you started out, the challenges, if you can talk a bit about that, because I'm sure it's not as easy as it is now for you when you approach someone. It's maybe the other way around, people approach you. But when you were starting out, if you can focus on that, the
Your
challenge.
challenges when you were starting, not the fact that you're now a big entrepreneur, but
The journey.
The journey, yes.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure I face similar challenges where everybody faces in terms of, you know, startup business growing. The challenges, the biggest challenge, of course, was to raise the finance. The money is always a big challenge because you have an opportunity in front of you, you have the market in front of you, but you probably don't have the resources in front of you. So this is where we talked about structuring your business from the beginning in such a way that you got your books right, because you need your bank sometimes, you know, to support you if you want to grow on that. And then the other challenge, of course, is always making people see what you're seeing in your business, right? Now, you want to be on a growth path, and you set your goals. You want to be this size in this year and another size another year. But then to reach there, you need your customers to believe in you. So that's what we talked about. Make sure you deliver on time, you perform, and then you need your employees to believe in you. So taking care of your people is a challenge. It's not easy because you're fighting with various factors. You're fighting with raising money. You're fighting with getting your job done, and then you want to keep your employees happy. So these are all the challenges that we faced. And then I think it's all about, at least for me personally, we build an environment within the company that we're all together in this, like one family. It's all a challenge that we doing it together. And of course, then with that, the motivation, and you perform and you keep delivering. So there's no substitute for delivery. When you keep delivering, the business will come to you. And your business is growing, I think your books are strong, and that's how you go forward.
I think we're going back to the same, is the financial discipline, and the belief in what you're doing and delivering it right. These are, again, the three main core fundamentals. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the interview, as I learned from here. Now, how do you see the futuristic of the SME in line with technology, cryptocurrencies, and blockchain? And how the survival of this SME businesses in the future? Thank you.
So the question is, how do you see technology playing a role in the future of the SMEs, and how will the SMEs adapt to this? Am I correct? Yes.
Technology, like with the cryptocurrencies and the blockchain technology, right. This has impact on the SME? Is that right. Will be a negative or positive? Just if I add me.
So all initiatives like the blockchain, the cryptocurrency, what impact will they have? Positive, negative, and how will the SMEs need to adapt?
I think if your question is technology in general rather than crypto in specific, I would say adopting both. Okay, so we'll deal with your first part of the technology in general. Now, technology is a very, very important part to adopt because a lot of technologies do disrupt the very fabric of your business. So if you're not able to identify we talked about the trends. Now, technology is one of the trends. If you're not up to date with what's happening in the modern world, how the innovations are happening, what the new technologies are coming in, then perhaps, if you're not careful, particularly at the SME level, or even the large businesses for that matter, it could disrupt your whole business. So you can use being well-informed, the technology to your advantage, and I gave my own example as a classic example. You see, for 40 years, the world has been using an LDPE core, which is nothing but petrol inside. And then the technology was available where you could replace the LDPE with actual stone or mineral. And then if you're not adopting the technology, so that business would have disrupted and closed down. And in terms of the crypto itself, I think it's a very interesting technology and definitely has a future as well, in my personal opinion. Now, the differentiate between crypto is all about credibility today. Now, there are a lot of cryptos, I don't know, about 10,000 cryptos in the market, but then people only have belief perhaps in the, single-digit cryptos. But then as a platform and the blockchain chain technology, I mean, these are the platforms which more and more institutions will adopt as long as they're tied to a certain service or the product. So this is what I believe in.
So what you're saying is that technology is not...
Well, I think positive or negative is really up to you, isn't it? That's prediction. Going to
what
prediction,
is
basically.
being, I think what is being probed here is
Maybe
that
I've not understood
will
the
it be and option or a or option? I mean, is it technology and human resource or technology or human resource? And how will this impact positively or negatively, correct? Yes.
I think the technology is, adopting the technology is not an option. It has to be adopted. And for sure, it is a positive impact. Because you see now, it's not about, there could be a thought process. If your question is about, disrupting the jobs or the technology taking of the jobs, but then if you really look at it, technology actually helps you grow your business faster, and the jobs are created in that. So you have a larger scheme of things, you'll probably end up with more jobs adopting technology rather than losing jobs. So it is a positive
the impact would be positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lady here. Out here. Here, gentlemen, in the first row.
So while we're talking about growth and expansion, quite often SMEs have moved towards a phase where they want to expand or diversify their portfolio of businesses. So I would like to know your insight about this one. From your experience, how was this journey towards when you chose to diversify your businesses? So that's my question.
Yeah. I think I kind of touched on the subject, but then I'll be a little more specific to your question here. Now, expansion of a business and to keep the accelerated growth is a very important aspect of, of your own aspirations, basically. Now, how do you do that? There's no really fixed formula on that. It's all about, now for us, if you give my example, now we are into healthcare, we are into power generation, we are into sports, and we are into building materials. So that's the diversification level of our business. Now, but that is a journey which also took us about 35 years. It's a process. But then it's extremely important that your business, what you call your cash cow, you protect that very much. Because you need that on a very, very solid base. So that's where your consolidation would come in. Make sure your business is on a really solid platform. And then your diversification has to be only part of that particular income. Now, if you have the plan where, of course, you have ideas and you want to try something new, and then if you're not depleting your resources in your main business, you're fine. And then be patient. It takes time,
There's a very famous book by author Jim Collins called Preserve the Core, Stimulate Progress. So I think that's exactly what you're trying to lead to. Thank you. Anyone else? Gentlemen?
Good morning, sir. Congratulations for all your success. Wanted to ask one simple question. What's the biggest challenge that you face operating in an international environment? Because personally, for me, I am into international markets, so I want to understand from you, since you have a worldwide footprint in several countries, what's the biggest challenge that you face operating in an international environment? Not in Dubai, because Dubai happens to be the best place to do business. From an international perspective, what are the biggest challenges? Thank you.
I think when you have international setup, where we have manufacturing plants in Turkey, in Europe, or India, or other countries. Now, really the biggest challenge is the management aspect of it. Remote control doesn't work because it's a famous saying that, remote stays in your hand and control goes away, basically. So you cannot do a remote control. Now it's all about how you build up your core management and the system that you actually set up with a central management, but at the same time giving them your staff and your managers the trust and the confidence to take their own decisions. So all about creating leaders. So that has been our biggest challenge and still a challenge. So I think if you are able to do that, then you are in a good space.
think we have time for 2 more questions. We could go for the gentleman here and the gentleman there.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your journey. It's truly inspirational. How much importance that an organization needs to place towards, especially the leadership in SME, towards people development? That's one part of the question. And number 2, in your experience, considering that what UAE is going through and the huge opportunity, which was earlier on shared by His Excellence in terms of the opportunity, what kind of areas that we need to focus on in terms of this development?
Okay, you said 2 questions. One was the people, and the second is
what specific areas that you feel that these people need to be developed upon?
all right. Yeah, I mean, as far as the human resources is concerned, I mean, they are your biggest asset. There's no denying, or there's no second thought on that. Now, it's how you actually develop those resources and how you make them connect and how you retain them. This is all part of your very, very important aspects of making your business successful. Now, without the human resources, the business actually is nothing. In spite of all the technological advances or whatever you say, in the end, it is that person-to-person interaction which actually makes things go forward, basically. Yes, for us, we give an extreme importance to the human resources development program and how you actually, right from recruitment to retaining them and their own roadmap to their future careers, basically. So if you're able to provide that to your employees, okay, you're here today, you'll be there tomorrow, and then the company will take care of you and your family. It's not just you. And then I think you are in a good space as far as your resources are concerned. Now, on your second question of which specific areas, now are you talking about areas within the human resources or areas of business? What exactly was your question?
Generally speaking, especially with small companies, what's happening is that, unfortunately, the kind of focus that needs to be given to for people's development, that doesn't happen because of number of people working in the organization, the pressures, and unfortunately, that kind of takes the back seat. It falls through the cracks. So my thing is that if the organization really need to invest in people, and I love the way you put that as a family, then what 1 or 2 areas that they can really focus on? For example, business acumen, XYZ. In your experience, what do you think is really important?
I think it's a whole package, really, because depends again on your size of your company and what your affordability is. You know, that is a fine balance there. You can have the most expensive training programs for your staff, but then it depends on where you stand. But I think one thing is certain. Now, each of the department or each of the staff that you have now need to see his or her junior colleague as the next leader. And then if you can create a culture within your company that you don't move up if you're not created your next succession, basically. And you know, when you have that, okay, there is something in it for me if I make sure my junior is coming to my level, basically. So that, I think one part is something which doesn't need very expensive training programs or whatever. It's the culture in the company, basically. Now you can create that positive culture, it can be extremely helpful. And then as you go in, of course, there's no limit to acknowledge the talent in your employee, send them to, good training programs, develop the skills, and so on and so forth, basically.
There's one last question.
Okay, we'll take that also.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you very much for an amazing conversation. Mr. Mulk, I have a very simple question. You were an SME at one point of time. I think you're a conglomerate now. What do you think is the next way forward for Mulk Holding? Is it a listing? Is it an IPO? Or if it is, what should SMEs think of when we want to charter a route or become a Mulk holding of the future? What should be the way forward for us?
Okay, I think you've got two questions within this. One is our own plans, and one is how the SME moves into a large conglomerate.
Sure.
I think in terms of the second part of your question, we perhaps have discussed that at length, and how small companies can grow into, the large companies, and our own example of Mulk Holdings, different diversification plans, how we actually integrated a lot of our forward and backward integration into diversification. So we were lucky in that. When we went to plastics and compounding, because our size itself was so large that we could actually make that into independent business, basically. So that is one way of diversification, once you grow into your own core business, basically. And then again, I think in new ideas, it all depends on identifying the market at that time and getting results of that. Now, what are the other questions? Sorry about
My first question was, do we see an IPO coming for Mulk Holding?
Oh, yeah, of course. Now, we are looking at that, not Mulk Holding as a group, but perhaps few of your companies within the group, Alubond, our core flagship brand. We are considering to go public with that. And perhaps the T10 Sports League as well. So we're considering both the companies, yes.
One last question from this gentleman here.
I think the gentleman has been asking for a while.
Okay. Got the mic.
We'll make it the last.
I just want to know, from your experience, how to tackle this issue. It's an issue, a general issue, especially for startups, usually comes to my mind, that the startups cannot access funding and finance unless they are successful. And they cannot be successful unless they have access to funds at the beginning. So it's like a catch-22 issue. So from your experience and the starting of your journey, how did you tackle this issue?
It's from your experience, how would you, what would you advise in terms of how does a SME access funds for growth? Is that correct in the summary of it? Okay. Sorry, can you give the gentleman a mic, please?
Especially in the startup phase,
In
the
the
start.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
Sure. I think we talked about finance being one of the key challenges for the SMEs and the startups. And then, you see, for that, I did mention earlier as well, make sure what you're doing is well documented properly. Because the institutions you go for finance perhaps will not give you money on an idea. Most people try and say, okay, I've got this brilliant idea, it's going to make me millions, and, how do I raise funds? I think that's not the right approach. Your approach is your business plan to be very well documented properly. Your projections has to be very specific. And if you are clear in exactly what you intend to do and how you're going to be going forward, you will find buyers for your idea. So this is what I would suggest here.
Thank you very much. I think it's been an amazing deliberation. We've had a lot of takeaways, but if I was to summarize today's discussion, I think we can conclude that the 3 Ps for accelerating growth is performance, people, and predictability. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It made my pleasure. Thank you.